What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to the Two Goat Show. We're your hosts, Miriah and Steph. Steph, happy Thursday. Happy Two Goat Thursday. How you doing?
To go Thursday. I'm doing great, can't complain. Yeah, excited to talk about the draft. We're just talking about how it's felt like forever since we talked, but it's just been a week.
Yeah, man. Like we were struggling to find stuff to talk about for a few weeks there, and now I feel like so much has happened. Like I was going to, put out the tweet today about the show, and I'm like, man, like there's so much has happened. Like, did we do a show last week? Like, I'm starting to think, like, did we cancel our show last week? Like, no, it really has only been a week. I'm like, but man, it felt like forever. Chat, happy Two Goat Thursday to all of y'all as well. Appreciate each of you guys for being here. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Hope you guys had a great week. And yeah, let's get into this. Steph, um, John Lynch he was on the Pat McAfee show today. So I have a few things I would like to talk about that and kind of connect it back and forth with the draft about some things he said. But before we get into any of that, how you feeling about the 49ers draft? We've had a few days now to kind of dig into stuff, check out the players we might have not known too much about, and yeah, so now that the dust has settled, how are you feeling about the 49ers draft?
I feel great about it. I mean, I gave it a B plus. I still give it a B plus after looking into more of these guys. I think it's been different than the drafts of the last 2, maybe even 3 years, and I like it, because I think I see a clear vision of what they kind of see for these players coming in, and I also think they got guys who are ready to compete, and they got guys who are could potentially be the foundation of, their next window that they're going to try to accomplish after this one in 2024, right? So yeah, I'm happy with the group, excited to see a lot of these guys play.
Yeah, obviously we all know this, but something that John Lynch had said today was that they were so close, to winning it last season. And so your hopes, with the free agency, with the draft, is to get that little bit better that you needed to be able to win it all, right? Um, we know how the 49ers are, specifically Kyle Shanahan is with rookies, with young guys, like, and especially when you're coming on, so they already have all that, right? Like Shanahan's tough to play young guys. And then you're coming into a team full of studs, right? Like most of the starting spots on this team, like they're taken by studs, by all pros. So these last roster spots, like it's a battle to get these spots, right? We obviously know the 49ers, they drafted guys. There's a handful of undrafted guys coming in, all to compete for a few roster spots. What draft picks do you think we have the best chance to actually make this roster and then contribute to make this team that little bit better that we need to hopefully bring home 6 finally?
Yeah, well, okay, I'll answer the second question first, because I think if you look at the kind of what went wrong in the Super Bowl, obviously offensive line could have been better in that game. There were just some lapses of bad plays that were detrimental to the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like, and then also as far as the offense, the other part of that is having receivers who can separate when you're playing man to man. It's not all on Brandon Ayuk. I mean, he did get open. Ideally, you'd want to see to get open more as well, but to go along with the offensive line issue, there wasn't always time to get the ball out to Ayuk and wait for his routes to develop, or for him to break into his route. So things like that. And then the obvious one with Debo is like we know he does struggle to separate in man coverage. And so I think the 49ers knew that going into this draft,
Mhm.
is how they addressed wide receiver. Not only addressed it, but they did it in such a way that they got separators. They got guys who can get open at the top of their breaks, and they can get open quickly, and that's kind of what they want. Jacob Cowan is a speed guy. That's another theme you kind of saw throughout this draft. They
Mhm.
want more speed on this team. I think they kind of saw this offense as unstoppable in a sense when they had Raheem Mostert.
Yeah. And it
But
was,
the
shit.
thing that was what they lacked was a quarterback who
Mhm.
could kind of balance it all out, right? Now they have a quarterback, but they don't have that like home run hitting
Yep.
running back, which is crazy because you do have CMC, and they did average like 30 plus or whatever it was points a game in 2023. But you saw in that game against a really good Chiefs defense, maybe they could have used some speed, some explosiveness. And then, also just going back to the offensive line, they got 2 offensive linemen. It's not wasn't a tackle. I think the 49ers probably wanted Rosengarten in that pick in the second round. He went right before their pick. So they had a pivot. I'm not mad at the pivot at all because if like I like Pooney a lot. It's just not maybe the position you wanted to prioritize over guard. But
Mhm.
guard is still a need too because after
Right.
2024, you have both guard spots are up in the air, right? Like you can definitely get some bodies there too. So yeah, to answer your first question about like which guys have the best chance to compete or to start maybe right away. I don't think anyone really has the I don't think anyone of these guys is going to be starting right away. I think if I had to just dart throw, I'd say Renardo Green has maybe the potential just because, I think if he has a good showing in camp and you have Mooney Ward and you have Lenore, if Renardo Green can beat out Isaac Yadam, which like, he definitely could, like if he has
Mhm.
a solid camp, I think they would roll with those 3 guys. And in your nickel package, you have Renardo Green maybe on the outside, and maybe they like Lenore, as a nickel, or like I know they've mentioned Renardo having the versatility of being able to play nickel too. So I'm sure we'll see
Mhm.
them experiment with that in camp, and see where they like him. But that's possible. Like I could definitely see that being a possibility in 2024. I think Pooney is gonna have a shot, like a real shot to compete in
Yeah.
whether or not he's gonna Feliciano, who's a vet who's been in the system already for a season, and he did pretty good. Like that's the question, right? Um, if Pooney can pick up the system really quick and he shows that like he knows all the protections and knows all of his assignments and doesn't make too many mistakes along the way, I could see Pooney potentially starting. But I see the most likely scenario being they keep the same starters that they did last year to end the season. So
Mhm.
Feliciano at that right guard spot. But if there's any injuries to any of those guys in the guard spots, I think Pooney will be first in line. He'll be the backup right away. Um, I think Isaac Guerendo's he's not going to start, obviously, right? But I
Right.
actually do feel like there's a decent chance, and this, of course, is dependent on him having a good camp. Um, which with these rookie running backs that they've drafted, we haven't always seen. But if he has a good camp, he has a potential to be the backup right away. And
Mhm.
if you're the backup, I think that with the speed that he has, like Kyle is going to want to use him right away as well because he wants to get some of that, Raheem Mostert magic back, right?
Yeah.
So right now I'm thinking those guys. I also think Malik Mustafa will probably be a special teams contributor right away. Like he's gonna be like one of the fan favorites, I think. Like
Mhm.
right off the bat, people are gonna talk about him and how good he is on special teams, I think. But those are kind of the guys that I really think have the best chance. Now, notice I didn't mention both of the receivers. That's not to say that I don't think they're gonna get on the field. I do
Right.
think Kyle's gonna, get some certain packages, certain plays where they're the guys instead of, the other top three guys that they have. But those other top three guys, I think, they've done such a good job, being those top three. So I don't think their spots are in danger right now. But we'll see Pearsall, and I think we'll see Cowan get mixed in. I think Pearsall will get mixed in a little bit more. In his rookie season, but I'm not expecting like a huge role for them right off the bat. Of course, injuries can change that, which, Debo dealt with a couple injuries last season. So there's definitely the opportunity. But just as like right off the bat being starters, I don't see it for a lot of those guys except for maybe Renardo Green.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with all of that. I'm very, we'll get into our favorite draft picks here in a second, so I don't want to touch on mine right yet. But, a guy you just talked about, Renardo Green, like, I'm very intrigued with the way that he's going to be used because I feel like the Renardo Green pick has Brandon Staley written all over it. He's somebody that played safety and cornerback in college. And, Brandon Staley likes to have a guy that is like a do-it-all guy back there, right? Like he can take him and move him here, there, corner, slot, safety. Kind of reminds me of like Jimmy Ward type, like that can
Yeah.
do it all. You can move to any spot around there. Brandon Staley likes to have that type of guy, and I feel like that guy could be Renardo Green. And if he could be, that for us, and that leaves then, Lenore and Ward on the outsides or whatnot. I'm feeling a lot better about this cornerback room going into this season than I did last season.
Yeah.
Because I feel like,
Sure.
if we can get better guys in there to, and I hate for anybody to lose their jobs, right? But the whole point is this team has to get better. And obviously it wasn't better. It wasn't good enough last season. So, guys like Ambry Thomas, we had to start a lot of the season with him in a starting position, and if we can minimize that or totally get that out of there, I'm feeling, and of course that on paper, Renardo Green has to live up to that because everybody thought, at one time Ambry Thomas could be the dude. And, here we are with that. But if Renardo Green could be the dude, that we're hoping he could be, like, man, this quarterback room and even the depth now, like I'm feeling a lot, even the safety room, the whole back end of the defense, like I'm feeling a lot better about it right now than I was months ago. So the draft
Yeah.
definitely did its job in that part. Somebody else that I'm intrigued with and really don't know too much about, and we got him, towards the end, is Kingston, because he's somebody that's played, he even talked about, like, he's played thousands of snaps of football. And even though, in actual games, he only played 4 positions, he considers himself to be able to play all 5 positions. And I just think, like, that's both the O-line guys, him and Pooney, their versatility, like those have 49er dudes just like written all over it, right? Like, and we know how Shanahan is with these guys, and if you can only play one position on the O-line or maybe two positions on the O-line, and now we just drafted a guy that's coming in that can play five, Mr. Two position guy towards the end of the roster, sorry, but your days are numbered. Because now we just drafted two O-line guys that can pretty much, obviously the arm lengths and stuff is a problem with the NFL that doesn't really allow them to play every position, right? But if need be, if it was an emergency and you don't have anybody, we have guys that know how to play every single position across the O-line now. And that's 49ers guys, if I'd ever seen one.
Yeah, I think that's another emphasis as well that we saw in this draft. Like, they got guys who can provide value at a lot of different positions. And if you're looking at depth guys, because like a lot of these guys aren't going to be starters right away,
Right.
like this is your depth, and your depth has to be valuable. Like, because they're not starting, so what else are they doing? How else are they adding value to the team? Can they play special teams? Can they, like, if someone got hurt, would they be able to step in for this guy? So yeah, I mean, all those things you mentioned, and it isn't just Kingston. A lot of guys have a lot of positional versatility. We mentioned it with Renardo Green. Even Malik Mustafa has a little bit of that. So across the board, they have a lot of versatility, and that's how you make your value in the NFL. So that's another reason why I feel good about the guys that they drafted making this roster, and actually not feeling bad about them making the roster and feeling like they only made the roster because they got drafted this year. No, it's because they actually have value in not just the position, but they play, but maybe other positions as well. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Chat, what's up? I see you all. Miss Debbie, I love you, sis. Hope you're doing great. Ty, Jason, Don, Alberto, Tech, we see you all. Hope you guys are all doing amazing. Somebody here I wanted to say hey to. Throwback, appreciate you so much. All the content creators should appreciate the hell out of you because you are such an awesome guy. Always sharing our stuff, always putting it out there, always getting everybody to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. So, you're always appreciated. Real quick, something John Lynch had said today about, being a 49er guy. He actually talked on that and said, that the 49ers drafted a bunch of Niner guys. And he described it as guys that love to compete, guys that can run, that are fast, that are physical. And then he talked about, since the league obviously is getting away from, being so physical and, we talk about it all the time, right? It's going to be flag football soon and all this, right? But he talked about, a way to still have a team that's able to be physical and play, that's the type of football that the 49ers want to play, is he described it as being able to have the knockback. He said, so what it is like you have to be able to hit them first, hit them and knock them back from whatever they're doing first. And that's how you get away with being the physical, team. And so, yeah, he said that guys that can play with knockback is a Niner guy. So, I thought that was interesting because we always talk about, and I talk about like with the vibes a lot that, like Hafunga, with Malik this draft, like there's just different guys that like I get a vibe from. It's just like, yeah, these dudes are 49ers guys, and so us as fans, as content creators, like we talk about that kind of stuff, but to hear the actual GM to say like, yeah, we drafted a bunch of guys that are Niners, and like have it line up like, dang, John Lynch is just like us. How about that?
Well, welcome back, John, because what happened in the previous like 2 or 3 drafts, like I don't know if all those guys were Niners, but I definitely see it. That's why I'm so excited about this class, because I see it. I see the vision. I see why the 49ers liked them. I see why these guys would fit in. Like they are Niners. I love it.
I agree. This draft, and that too is why I'm so excited about this draft, is because like it looks a lot different than what the last couple drafts has looked like. And everybody was so scared how and obviously we don't know yet, right? Like we don't know what any of these guys are going to turn out to be, but on paper right now, it looks good. And everybody was so scared about, oh, well, how John Lynch and how are they going to do without having Adam Peters there? And Adam Peters is the mastermind to all these great draft, always the great draft picks. Those are Adam Peters guys. And the ones that have been bad or, haven't done good, those are always John Lynch's guys, right? And so now we get into this draft and, well, Adam Peters isn't here. So there's no more, Adam Peters or John Lynch guys. That's 49ers. And they talk about this all the time. John Lynch is a big one that talks about this, that they get input from everybody in there on these draft picks, and obviously Kyle and then they make the final decision, but it's not like they're just going in there and like, okay, this is the guys we're like, this is the guys we're drafting. No, they're everybody has a hand in this. And I'm happy with the way that they were able to draft with Adam Peters not being here. So,
well, I'll say this though, on that, like, I think we'll know more about what they're drafting and what their draft strategy will be like without Peters more next year, because this year he was part of their scouting cycle, like for much of the season. It wasn't till like, a few months before the draft that he did depart to Washington. But by then you have like a pretty good idea of what you want, which guys, like what range you have certain guys in. So I think next year is when I'll start to really be like, oh, okay, like that's what you did without Peters. Yes, like draft day and like the lead up to the draft, they did without Peters, but I think he still had a pretty big hand probably in the evaluation process leading up to the draft before he went to Washington.
Well, he would have drafted those players than his own self, Steph.
Hey, I did like his draft, just saying.
Me too. Yeah, I think he's doing an awesome job over there. Like, I'm definitely pulling for them. It makes it nice that they're on the other side, right? Like,
Right.
What's up, John V? I see you. I see you guys coming through with a couple of questions. We'll try to get to them. Corona, I see you. I got your thank you card. Thank you so much. All right, Steph. So looking at this draft picks, which ones are your favorite of the bunch? My top favorite. I mean, I'm happy with this draft, right? So it's not none that I'm like, but
yeah.
I have to, pick some. I'm definitely going with Mustafa, and I'm going to call him like how Mufasa is in The Lion King, like Mufasa, but I'm going to Mustafa, because every time I say his name, that's what I think of. So now that's what I'm going to do. I like him a lot. I love that he grew up a 49ers fan. And he just like just his vibe about him, just I don't know, like I love that kid already. And then another guy that I like, and it was pretty cool seeing the picture float around social media today or maybe the last couple days, is linebacker Tatum Bethune. And the picture I'm talking about is that Nick Bosa's mom put out a picture on social media, and it's of the two Bosa brothers and the two Bethune brothers, all four standing together, I guess, when they were in college. They look really young. And so, it's pretty cool that he already had her, and she's put, that these kids were like brothers, whatnot. So it's cool that they're meeting back up there. But just his vibe, the story, like both of them are my top guys. I like Isaac a lot as well. But I'm just trying to be prepared for Kyle Shanahan, because I feel like any running back that I've liked in the last however long, obviously except for CMC, either we don't see them get on the field, they get traded, they get kicked to the practice squad, something happens to them, we never see them again. So I'm trying to just keep my feelings for the dimple boy in check. But I think like with his speed, like you talked about it, we've been missing that since Mostert. Like CMC is so damn good, right? But he doesn't have that speed to be able to get to the outside, and we haven't had a running back that could do it since Mostert left. And that's something that's been missing from our offense. And if Isaac, with his speed, if Kyle will use him, he could be so damn good in this offense. And, like there's still some stuff he needs to work on, right? Like he's not the best running back. That's why he went number 15 of the running backs or whatever it was, right? But in this, the place that a player gets drafted to is so important. The fit for that player, right? Like so many times we see these players go to teams that they don't fit, or that they get drafted to a team that they do fit the system their rookie year, but then that coach gets fired, and the rest of that guy's career at that team, he doesn't fit the system. He gets pushed down the draft, pushed down the depth chart, and there goes their career. Like we see it happen so often. Isaac's fit with Kyle Shanahan can be so good if Kyle actually uses the kid. And to have CMC and Isaac as that, to be able to offset, like even with, the rest of the running back room, like they all bring something so different now. Like I do think that that there's going to be a move made, and I think that Elijah Mitchell probably gets traded. That's what I'm guessing. But they all bring something so different to that running back room now, and it really makes what Kyle can do with them endless possibilities. Like I can't wait.
Yeah, and it's not just the running back room that I think like we see a new wrinkle, and we're seeing that all the running backs kind of have something very different to offer. I think like with the 2 wide receiver picks, they now had something they didn't have before as well. And so yeah, the possibilities are going to be endless, and you're going to see now that the 49ers aren't pigeonholed to doing just one thing on offense, or when they run the ball. Like they can mix it up if they need to, if the defense wants to. I mean, we always say like pick your poison, right? Well, there's times where maybe the defenses could be able to stop like all the guys that the 49ers do have. It takes a really good defense to do that. There's like the only defenses I saw do that in 2023 were like the Ravens, the Browns, and the Chiefs did a pretty good job at it as well. And so if there's a really good defense who can kind of neutralize all of your guys, well, or at least one of those guys, 2 of those guys, and all of it kind of falls on the third guy to be able to do something, but he can't because he can't separate. I'm not naming any names. I'm just saying, I'm just throwing out an example, right? Or your tight end is too busy blocking, so he can't, he can't go out and run a route. You have other guys now who you can put in, and it could open things up. So I'm excited in that regard. Okay, so what did you ask before? Who are my favorite?
Even undrafted, if you have some guy, that you like the undrafted guys as well.
Yeah, I don't know if I have like a favorite. I like all of them. It'd probably be easier to tell you which ones I'm like not as inspired by, I guess.
Well, don't do that yet, because that's a part of would you. Who would you at the end? So
okay. For me, I was one of the people that was like the 49ers need to address offensive line. Now, I wasn't sure that they would address tackle, but I just wanted them to get at least one offensive lineman in this class, just because like there were a lot of good ones, I thought. And the 49ers shouldn't like, piss away that opportunity. So when they got Pooney, I was pretty freaking happy, because like I said, it came after the round where they could have gotten Rosengarten. There was a run on tackles that happened. There were a lot of guys coming off the board between like their before their second pick and like before their third. Like there were so many offensive linemen that went there, and I was like, oh God, like they kind of missed their window to like get someone. Like who could they end up with now? And I thought Pooney was actually, like I said, a really good consolation prize, for the 49ers at that time. And it made me feel better about the previous two picks, if that made sense, because like their first three picks were their biggest needs, like
Yep.
wide receiver, corner, and then offensive line, like boom, boom, boom in the first three picks. Maybe it wasn't the order that I thought it would happen, but after they got the offensive lineman, it's like, oh, okay, like I could relax now. Okay, like we got a corner too. What's up? Like
Mhm.
we got a wide receiver. So it just made me more excited about everything else that they did, knowing that they did secure that. And yeah, that's definitely one of them. And I do love Renardo Green. Like I think he's gonna be a dog. Like, and the thing that I guess is different from what they had before is like obviously his specialty is more press man, and I
Mhm.
mean to play press man, you got to be and not just to play it, but to excel at it, you got to have a lot of confidence. And to me, like he exudes a lot of confidence, um, and that's what they need out of their corners, right? I think they have that with like Lenore. I love Lenore's confidence, right? And you kind of see how like just having that elevates his game.
Mhm.
And so having another guy like that in Renardo Green, I think just adds to the strength of that secondary of that cornerback room. And so I'm really excited for him. So I'd say those two picks I was pretty excited for sure.
Yeah, you talk about those three picks going together, and TL and I had done our show last week on Friday, so before the second day of the draft. So at the time, we had only drafted a wide receiver. And,
Yeah.
one of the things that I had said is I was surprised, that it was a wide receiver. I said, but let us finish out the draft and maybe it'll all make more sense, right? Like if with the next couple picks, they address the other needs that we were all wanting, exactly like you said, it may have not been the order in which we all thought, but
Yeah.
all three of those needs right there got addressed, and it made the first round pick make more sense, because it all kind of fell into place there. And then you talk about Green being a dog. After day 2 of the draft, I put out a tweet, in the first 3 draft picks that we have drafted, I put out 3 out of 3 dogs, like all 3 of those guys, with the wide receiver, Pooney in the O line, with with Renardo Green, like all of them are dogs. So Pearsall, like I love the way like he's not scared of shit out there on the field. Like he'll go up for the ball, and I talked about this
Mhm.
on my show at TL. Like you would think a guy, right? Like he knew he was coming out into the draft, that was his last year that he was playing. And he wasn't playing like he was scared to get hurt out there. Like he's going up because his quarterback was shit. So he's throwing the ball, 15 feet above his head, 16 feet in front of him in the dirt, so he's having to do all this crazy stuff. He's like jumping up 5-6 feet in the air in front of 3 defenders and having absolutely zero fear of doing so and catching that ball and coming down with it, getting smashed up and popping right back up like it's nothing. And
Mhm.
that's what those are the type of guys that I love to be on this team. The dogs, like you said, we got Diamador Lenore, like we have a couple sprinkled in there, but anytime that you can add more of those dogs, like they're on both sides of the ball, right? Like we see so much of
Right.
them on the defense, but to be able to add them on the offense too, like is awesome. So yeah, I was loving the way that it all just kind of came together. And then obviously day 3 of the draft, they kind of just kept filling holes, and it seemed to just go, perfectly. I'm like, okay, like you can definitely see the vision. They drafted all these older guys with experience. I kept saying, like, they already got their man bodies, you know, and they're ready to play now. They're ready to contribute now. Not guys that got to sit there, got to put in time on the bench, got to put in time on the weight room, got to get reps. No, these guys have thousands of reps on all of them, you know, and they all have so much playing time, so much experience. And that's what I think is going to make the difference, that we're going to see guys that can contribute to this team this season. And if we probably look back on the last few drafts, like, there's guys we still haven't seen have playing time yet, you know, like, that are still just hanging around in those last roster spots. Like, no, like, these guys, I think there's going to be a few that can actually make a difference, and I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into what time is it? All right, let's get into what John Lynch talked about, some things that he talked about. Obviously, I talked about, you know, what he said about him, like, the guys that they drafted are Niners, kind of that, you know, in that little whole section, just to close that off, he talked as well about, you got to have the ability to play with power. He talked about how Hank brought in the no block, no rock, you know, thing into the wide receiver room. He says, you know, like, words that they get used around there a lot is contagiously competitive. And so he says, you know, if the top guys are being competitive, you know, that's contagious. Like, it sprinkles down to the rest of the guys, you know, on the team. And, you know, something like I thought was interesting is that they had talked about, like, on the offense is, like, you're looking, most teams, they're the guys that set, like, the identity, like the like dog, you know, on the offense is the offensive line. And Lynch talked about how that's different here. And he said it might be because Shanahan was a wide receiver. It might be just because Shanahan expects so much out of the wide receivers. He said, but on this team, it's the wide receivers that carry that dog and, you know, set the mentality and set everything for the offense. And, you know, they talked about how, like, that's pretty cool because, like, you know, like, oh yeah, the O-line, you're expecting them to be dogs, right? They block. That's what they're supposed to do. But when you're getting that out of your wide receivers, the position that's supposed to be the diva, the, you know, this, that's like all this, they get talked about. But those are the guys that are out there blocking guys into the Gatorade table. Ayuk blocking guys, you know, 10 feet down, you know, 10 yards, 15, 20 yards down the field. You know, like, when your wide receivers are out there getting their nose dirty and doing the dirty work like that, then the offensive line thinks, hey, like, we got to step up our game. Those guys are out there doing that. Like, so we need to do this, you know? And then you have the running backs, the guys that are supposed to be blockers as well. Like, okay, our wide receivers are doing this. Like, shit, we need to step up our game. And now we need to do this, you know? And Lynch talked about how, like, that's how the mentality is on the offense. And he said, obviously, every year that resets. So now going into this year, the wide receivers now have to bring it. Don't just carry on. Oh, they were the biggest and baddest last season, so now they are this season. No, the wide receivers now have to start all over, bringing that effort, bringing that, you know, everything, starting in training camp and practice and preseason, all the way throughout the season. So setting that tone for the offense to follow in line. So I thought that was pretty cool to hear. They asked him what's harder, game day as a player or game day as a GM. And he said, game day sucks as a GM. He said, there's nothing you can do about it. He said in his first year as GM with the team that he would be up there in the booth and he's like, you know, I'm new, I'm coming, you know, like, oh, the TV guy. He's like, so the cameras would be on him a lot. And he would be up there slamming his fist on the table, you know, like getting all pissed off and stuff. And that his dad told him, like, hey, like, you need to learn how to control that, like, you know, control that emotion. Like, you can't just be like up there slamming shit around, you know. He's like, you have to be able to have poise, you know. And so he said that he had to learn, but that he could still be passionate, you know, like, he considers it like he's out there living and dying with these guys, you know, just because he can't strap it up and go to, you know, war with them on the field. He considers like he's still out there going to war with them, you know. So I thought that was pretty cool. They asked him like if he's a pacer or if he sits or whatnot, and he said that he paces a lot, but that he's superstitious. So he tries to. He most of the time he stands on defense and he'll sit on offense. So I'm like, okay, like that. John Lynch really is just like us, man. Like he's up there like slamming stuff around just like we are. Like now you know how the fans feel. Like we got to just watch whatever's out there on the field. We don't get a say about it either. So
Right.
I figure for sure he was going to say as a GM because he wants to be out there freaking playing, right? You know. So
Absolutely.
I thought it was pretty cool. Any thoughts on those? Anything that I've touched on so far before I go too far that you forget?
No, I mean that thing of being infectious, like in that certain level of play, being infectious is definitely something that I've seen and noticed. Like Fred Warner, he's like the model linebacker for
Mm-hmm.
all player, and not just the other linebackers in that room, but I think everyone on the defense. Like you want to play as hard as him just because you see someone putting their all into like every play, right? So I do think it is contagious, right? And so I'm glad, John mentioned that too, because I have seen that, and for them to, want to continue to have guys who can fall in line with that kind of mentality as well, I think is big. And I think it's part of their culture, right? So being able to take someone else's example and like I said, fall in line and be able to uh follow that is big as well. So that's another reason why I'm excited about this group. But yeah, I checked out that interview and it was pretty entertaining. It was a great
Um,
one.
yeah, so to touch up, they asked him, of course, about what's going on with the wide receiver room, and then a couple things that he talked about on Brock. So just real quick, so for the wide receiver room, they asked him, like how he's navigating it. Obviously, with them now drafting 2 wide receivers and whatnot, and we know like this last week, even after the draft ended, there's still rumors circulating that, the 49ers, the Steelers wanting to trade for a wide receiver, and could be Ayuk, it could be Debo, right? It could be this, could be that. How I felt about, and I talked about this week with TL, is that I could not see, like the whole point is to make this team, we just been talking about this all show, this team better than we were last season. Now, trading one of those guys for future draft picks now after the draft is over, it has to be a future draft pick, is not helping this team get better. So the only way I could see it happening is if you're trading player for player or player for player and a draft pick, right? Like, but you have to be getting something to make the team better than what they are right now. And what I don't see it happening, right? Like you're having to trade a hell of a good player to be able to trade up, let's just say Debo, for conversation's sake, like to be able to what you're subtracting from what he's going to, what we're going to lose on offense. You're having to bring in a hell of a good player that's going to make up that difference. If what he means specifically to the offense, right? Like, so yeah, but where he talked about the wide receiver room, he says, he loves how the roster is right now. Obviously, he's got that's where he talked about that they got to find a way to get it a little bit better. He's done everything in his power to keep the roster together, and he's going to keep trying to do that. He said that they take a lot of pride in who Brandon Ayuk and Debo Samuel have become, that they drafted those guys, and he's going to do everything he can to keep them here. And that's what I've been talking about with Ayuk. Like, you don't help turn him into the stud that he is now and then watch him go in his prime to another team and flourish. And you got to start all the way back over trying to turn these guys into what they could be, right? Like, and so he said that, yeah, throughout the lead up to the draft, he says, of course, you're having combos, combos are going to happen about players and whatnot. He says, but we're past that now. So I thought that was very interesting. Obviously, we'll wait and see what happens. But all signs and everything that keeps coming out is that him and like it's not that Brandon Ayuk's in there wanting a trade. They can't come to like sides are completely off and shit. It's everything's always we're having good talks. We're having good talks. We're having good talks. So I just can't see a move being made, like I said, unless it's for some player that then can help contribute to make this team better than what it would be with either of those guys on the team.
Right, which is of course why I think they would have considered it for the draft and why they wanted a first round pick, because if you get like a mid 20, in that range of a first round pick, then you're getting a starting tackle, right? Like, I mean, who doesn't want that? I mean, we see how hard it is to get tackles in this league and good ones. So if you have the opportunity, you take it. Not surprising that they listen to offers. Also not surprising that they didn't take the offers that were on the table if it didn't involve what they wanted, which like first round pick, right? So yeah, I think the ship sailed, and it's going to be BA and Debo this season, and then we'll reevaluate after 2024.
Right. Yep, I agree. And then Brock, he kind of, and we've been talking about like, who had, the what word am I looking for? Who was the masterminds behind Brock Purdy, right? Like, and he talked about, the unsung heroes in the Brock Purdy situation and gave credit to both Brian Griese and Steve Slowick, who was the college scout for Iowa State at the time. He's since changed positions, but that's what he was at the time. And he said that Slowick spoke so great of Brock, during that process, and always talked about him being a culture changer, like that he went into Iowa and completely changed everything that football program was about. And so that's something like that Steve talked a lot about. He said that Brian Griese did a lot of Zoom calls with Brock, and that Griese was extremely convicted and impressed after talking to him on Zoom. Lynch also said, that saying that goes around, especially around training camp time and whatnot. And this goes with, obviously Brock going into on his rookie season, he was, third string quarterback. And that is, don't count your reps, make your reps count. And he said, there were at the start of it that Brock was only getting like 3 reps a day, right. But with those 3 reps, he wasn't going in there and trying to be like, oh, okay, let me not make a mistake and just dump it off here and do this. Like, no, he's going out there and he's throwing the ball. Like he's, he said he made the best of every single rep that he could. And he's going out there, and he said, like, with confidence and conviction, like, even though you're getting 3 reps, like he's going out there, like, I'm the starting quarterback. Like, this is my team. This is how I play, and that Kyle saw that and was like, hey, like, this is what he's doing with 3 reps. Let's see what he does with 6 reps. And then he went out and did the same thing, and that he's like, okay, 9 reps, 12 reps. And, and like, that's how they figured out like what Brock Purdy was, and how they started seeing like Brock Purdy, and so I thought that was pretty cool. And he said, he just kept doing it, getting better. And he said he's been awesome. They're thrilled to have him. And this line, like, I thought was pretty cool, because we know obviously that this whole quarterback thing has not been easy, right? Like, man, like we've been up and down emotions like crazy as fans trying to get like our next quarterback, like so many years, like we've gone through, oh, could this be our guy? And it's like, okay, that was our guy for a couple of years, but then he couldn't do it, and it's just like, man. So for John Lynch, he said, like the whole thing with Brock being drafted last and whatnot, like, yeah, it's a great story. But he said, it's more than a story now. He's our guy. And so I thought that was pretty cool. And they asked him about that picture that's going around about Brock, where he's all buff. And, like it got fixed. Like he does look buff in the original picture too, even I was like, dang, like he's been working out. Right. But now like people have done work to the picture. And so
Yeah.
like Brock Purdy's head's like this little pea head, and he has like this big ass buff arms, right? Like he's all swole. And so they asked him, like, is Brock Purdy, is that picture going around about him? Is he really swole and buffed up, or like has somebody doctored that picture up? And like they all just started laughing. And John Lynch said that like Brock Purdy is a worker, like he is jacked up, like obviously not that jacked, but like that he's been in there working, and that he's jacked. And then he ended the whole Brock Purdy thing to say like that they're super blessed to have Brock Purdy there as an like in the organization. So your thoughts on Brock Purdy?
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say that I think it was cool for John Lynch to, in a public forum like the Pat McAfee show, give props to those guys. I mean, he was asked like who was kind of behind that, but he could have taken the credit for that. And there's a lot of ego-driven GMs in the NFL who probably would have taken credit for that. So shout out to John for, giving those other guys some shine. Because also like more eyes are going to be on Slowick, and those other guys at Greasy as well for jobs outside of the 49ers, just because of,
Yeah, I didn't even know who Steve Slowick was.
yeah.
I didn't know Bobby even had a brother, like
Yeah, man, they're everywhere. So yeah, I thought that was cool. And also, like, to say it's more than a story, and just say he's our quarterback. Like we knew, right, that he's a guy, but man, it just feels good to know it and not be afraid to say it. Um, yeah, I love
because
Brock, man. He's a
yeah,
real
like
deal.
even when Jimmy was, our guy, it's like we knew that they were never satisfied with him, because they were always trying to cheat on him the whole time, right? Like they're always like that meme where they're walking, the boyfriend and the girlfriend, and
Yeah.
the guy's turning and looking at the other girl. Like that's Kyle and Jimmy right there, right? And like Kyle would never say nice things about him in public. Like it was like the mistress, or like he, and it was just like, even though we knew that Jimmy could be better, it was just like, it would be nice, if the coach, if the team like could actually get behind your quarterback and back them, like have the
Yeah.
support for the guy that's supposed to be the face of your franchise. And now, night and day difference with the way Shanahan talks about Brock and how he talked about Jimmy. We never
Oh
we
yeah.
never had John Lynch going out in public, such a huge setting like Pat McAfee, and saying Jimmy's our guy. Like we're blessed to have him in this organization. So it
Exactly.
was awesome. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So one, where is it? Where is it, Steph? Oh my God. All right.
Who's talking about pizzas? People talking about food in the comments, and now I'm hungry.
Dang, I'm hungry
Someone
too.
talking about pork pizza. I'm like, damn, that sounds good. All right, sorry.
I gotta figure out what I'm gonna make for dinner. All right. So who would you? I talked about, don't tell us the draft picks you didn't like, because we would get
Yeah,
to it.
yep.
So who would you swap out? What 49ers draft picks would you swap out for another player that was drafted, like around the same area, not like 10
So,
freaking rounds later, but if you have a draft pick that you would like to swap out, which one would it be?
that's tough, because then I'd have to
Okay,
look
just let
at,
us know who you want to
I'd
get
have
out.
to remember. I would have wanted Rosengarten, but I like Renardo Green, so I wouldn't, I don't know if I'd do the swap. And then the one pick that I was gonna say earlier that I didn't really, not too inspired by, is Tatum Bethune, and I don't know who who went that far in the draft. That's like the tail end. Isaac Garendo potentially, just because, if we're talking about value, he would have definitely been there at pick 135, like six picks
Yeah,
later, you didn't have to trade up for him. So yeah, maybe those guys.
that is surprising too. Like I thought We didn't need him picking a running back in the third, but then he picks one in the fourth and trades up for him. It's like, oh my God, what's Kyle doing?
Exactly.
Just to sit him on the bench in the doghouse. Like, oh.
Exactly.
All right, Steph, you got something popping right after this? Let the people know so they can tune right back in.
KJ said Jarrett Kingston for Luke McCaffrey, but McCaffrey went in the third round, so you'd have to swap Pooney or someone else. That's not gonna fly. Yeah, I'm going live with Ashley after this. It's her channel, but a dual streaming of my channel as well. So if you guys want to check that out, we'll be talking about the draft as well.
There you go. All right. To go Thursday. Hope you guys had a great show with us. We appreciate you all for being here. Please make sure that you subscribe to both channels. The link to her channel is in the description box of my channel, so nice and easy for you. We greatly appreciate all of you guys. We'll see you guys same time, same place next Thursday, 3 p.m. Pacific time. We're out of here, faithful. Peace.